everyone. Welcome back. We're up to episode 28 of Behind Enemy Lines Hockey Podcast. Today's topic is we're going to play GM for a little bit and find out, what we think the deadline deals need to be for the team. As always, joined by my co-host Steve. And I'm going to throw it over to Steve, who'll start us off with today's trivia question.
Well, it's good to be back, Sheldon. These are a lot of fun, and you're right. We're going to talk about what comes next because we're in the middle of an Olympic break. Hockey starts tomorrow, the men's side. So shameless plug for Go Canada Go. US can suck it. But we have 4 games coming up, 3 games actually coming up out of the break, and we need to talk about trades. So we're on borrowed time. So today's trivia question is: the NHL first adopted the official registered trade deadline in the 1979-80 season. Montreal made their first trade the following year. What name was the name traded?
Russ Courtnall.
That was a few years later.
Oh, okay. I was just
This
throwing
is
it out there.
pre Russ Courtnall.
Yeah. Okay.
And I'll give a little hint. There's a little bit of a hop to the answer.
Okay. Okay. So as Steve mentioned, we're on an Olympic break here, so we don't have any games coming up in the near future. But we did have a pretty strong finish with our last 4 games before the break. And I'm going to throw that back to you, Steve. I know you want to touch a little bit on them 4 games before the break.
Yeah, well, I got the last 3, and I we could go on and keep going back, but we played the last 3 games was a 4-2 win against Buffalo, a 4-3 overtime loss to Minnesota, and then a pretty convincing 5-1 win over Winnipeg. Mm-hmm. So we get 5 of 6 points going in the last week, going into the Olympic break, and some can argue it's the wrong time to have a break. We were playing well, the team was starting to roll. Players that were hurt were starting to come back. We saw Kirby Dach come back, and I thought in his body of work, he showed that he was ready to play. This break could be good for him because we know Bandage Boy needs some rest. Mm-hmm. So, maybe this is good. Maybe this is good for Kirby, but bad for everybody else. Mm-hmm. So it comes with a little bit of a caveat because, you like to strike while the iron's hot. Now everybody else gets to rest and reset, and the meeting of the mindless in every other 31 war rooms is going to say, what do we need to do next? Mm-hmm. And we could lose the momentum we had, but let's hope that our star athletes that have gone over to represent their various countries come back on a high, playing well, and continue to carry us in past the Olympic break.
Mm-hmm. And since we're talking about past the Olympic break, the Olympic break is done the 25th, I believe. So the NHL season resumes February 25th after the Olympic break. The trade deadline is March 6th. I believe it's 6 p.m. is the official trade line, is it not? 6 p.m., something in that time.
Well, it's usually 3 Eastern time.
3 Eastern. Okay.
Yeah.
So in between that, Montreal has 3 games to play actually before the trade deadline day, if you don't count the one they actually playing on trade deadline day.
The trades will be made by the time game time rolls around. So
yeah, the moves will already
really count that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So February 26th, which is a Thursday, we got the Islanders in town. I'm actually going to be at that game. February 28th, Saturday, Washington will be in town. I'm going to be at that game as well. And then March 3rd, we are at San Jose, which would be the start of a Western road swing. What do you want to touch on with those 3 games before the trade deadline?
Well, if we lose the first 2 at home, it's your fault since you're going to be there. So we'll just we'll throw Jenny under the bus since she can't argue with us right now. Yeah. But we're going to get right into it. The Islander game, in my opinion, is the one we need to worry about. Why? Patrick Waugh makes his return to Montreal, and there's lovers of Patrick Waugh and there's haters of Patrick Waugh. He was a trade deadline kind of ruined our franchise for a few years when he says trade me right fucking now.
Yeah.
but he seems to get the team a little bit hyped up in the dressing room. Whenever he's been a coach of a team, whether it be Colorado or the Islanders, they seem to play well in Montreal.
Mhm.
They made a couple of trades just prior to the Olympic break. So I don't suspect that the trades are done. I expect that the second the freeze is lifted, there will be a few players coming back from the Olympics going to new teams before they even get off a plane.
Yeah.
I'm hoping we're one of those teams, but the Islanders are a team that's on a roll. I'm worried, honestly, about the Washington Capitals, not because I think they beat us. Here's a franchise that overachieved last year and maybe has dialed back into a sense of reality this year. And they've sent over Tom Wilson and Logan Thompson to play for Canada. And
Mhm.
then the other game is San Jose. And San Jose should be the easiest game of the three prior to the trade deadline. And then trade deadline day, we play Anaheim. But that's in Anaheim. So, trade deadline will be long gone. So let's hope we have a few bodies in. We could play that one a little bit shorthanded, depending on whether roster players are moved. So,
Mhm.
don't be surprised if there's a call up in and around that time, so that we have enough bodies to play for the game,
Mhm.
even if it's a one game. Because the following night we're in LA.
Yeah. And I think you might be right. I think there's going to be some call ups for players who've been moved. My take on it is I think this realistically is, these three games, if we had any less than 4 points out of that, I would be disappointed. But I realistically I can see us getting 6 points, which is ultimately obviously would be, the ideal scenario. But I think 4 out of 6 points is realistic. It's what I'm expecting. If we don't get that, I'll be honest, I'll be a little bit disappointed out of that result.
I would agree. We've been playing well.
Mhm.
And when you want to dig into statistics and what we've done and what we haven't done, what can improve, what can improve, who do we blame, who do we fire? We had a 4 game stretch where we gave up a shit ton of goals. I think we gave up 26 goals in 4 games.
Mhm.
And those were the 4 games that we wish we could have back. If you took those 4 games and even gave us one win and an overtime loss in that game,
Yeah.
in one of those games, and cut down on the goals against, we'd be right up there with Tampa. So it's not that we played bad. We had bad stretches, and those are the things you need to try and avoid. And how do you avoid that? You do exactly what you said. You win the games where you should win, and you start to bank your points. And they're big points coming out of the break, because the top of the division is starting to tighten up, and we're starting to see some separation. Teams 10, 11, 12, and at the bottom are starting to tail off. So could we separate from the rest of the group? Absolutely.
Mhm. Yeah, and I think the separation point I think is clearly becoming a little more defined as we go, later on into the season. And I think you're going to see, like you say, some of them bottom end teams are going to drop off pretty quick.
Including the Toronto Make Me Laughs,
Well,
because they're
I
falling
think they
apart.
might have already dropped off. So, but
Oh,
uh,
yeah, yeah. You think the staff in Toronto have already got the bailing buckets at the bottom of the Titanic, trying to stay afloat? I think it's too late.
well, I'm not saying they've given up, but I think they've already booked their trips to Mexico. That's all I'm saying. Um, So let's get into where we are as a team. Um, let's do a little bit of a, I guess, what you would call for, you being an American, transplanted American, a little bit of a State of the Union kind of thing. Uh, right now, Montreal's power play is hitting at 23.9%, which is in seventh. Their PK is 76.9%, which is 25th. Goals for 197, goals against 183. Their goals for actually we're third in the league for goals for. Our goals against 183 is we're 23rd. That needs to be improved. It's a massive jump over last year. We're doing far better. Our points, wins, our percentages, everything. So we're definitely on the rise. And I bring this up because I think we need to know these numbers to know what direction the team needs to go
Yeah,
as far as what moves need to be made. I mean, we all know playoff hockey is a different game. We all know a team built for the regular season isn't necessarily going to do well in the playoffs and vice versa. However, to me, from the stats that I've read out, our defense seems to be um, not a glaring hole, but we need to get our goals against down.
Well, like I said, if you go back and look at that four game stretch where we shit the bed, and you
Mm,
take off 16 of those goals because you go by realistic, we lose 4 goals and not 7 and 8, we would jump up inside the top 15 in goals against,
mm,
because if you take off 60, you would jump up.
yeah.
Now, like I said, you're going to have bad stretches. We didn't have a bad stretch. We had a despicable stretch, and it was not good by any stretch of the imagination. Which, if you follow the bouncy ball, which got by us a lot, that gave Jacob Fowler a recall. So one bad situation curtailed another decision.
Mm,
Um, you know, Defense, goals against average, and penalty kill all tie into the same thing. Structurally and foundation wise, we need to be better. We're not going to go from 25th to first in goals against average. There's not enough games left, and we're not going to pound teams by 12 goals. So the likes of Colorado will still be ahead of us at the end of the year. But can we make moderate improvements? I believe we can.
mm,
2 weeks ago, we were probably 27th on the penalty kill. It doesn't sound like much to move up to 25th,
yeah.
but we have made some improvements. Why? Again, we're starting to get healthy bodies back. Jake Evans came back. We acquired Philip Deneau. That gives us a little bit of structure and consistency when we start killing the penalty. Both guys can play center. Both guys are pretty good on the draw. Both guys are specialized in playing a man down. So some of these things have started to curtail themselves.
Mm,
The second part of this is, and this is not a surprise, we need our goaltenders to be better. You can argue, is a 900 save percentage, the standard is at 905, is at 910. I don't worry so much about that number. I worry about the wins, but we can't be ugly every time we win.
mm,
And that was a trend there for a while.
mm,
We've seen a mini resurgence in Sammy, and then he fell off the face of the earth again. So, a broken clock is right twice a day, and he had a couple of good games, so which proves that theory. And I'm just going to go out on an Urban Dictionary kind of translation, but if you take Jakob Dobish, loosely translated means does better. That's why he's the number one goalie. So,
mm,
and that's not really the reason. But we need the goaltenders to be better, and
mm,
that's one aspect that we need. We need a consistent effort, and we're going to lose in some of those. But I believe if we get slightly better goaltending, our penalty kill improves, the overall team defense improves,
mm.
because they haven't been a terrible group. They've just had a terrible stretch.
Yeah. And I agree. I think that 900, and I've said it before, I like that 900 number on the save percentage. And I agree. It's not the make or break. I just think it makes life easier for your team when you have a goalie that's getting that number above, and it helps take some of the pressure off the team because you know as well as I do, there was a stretch there when Sammy was playing where you could see the look on the players' faces where they were like, "Ew," you know what I mean? Like, they were afraid he was going to give up that bad goal or he was going to give up an easy one, and then they had to struggle, to score, to get whatever. I just think it takes the pressure off the team. If you know your goalie's going to make that save, he probably should make, and you don't have to worry about that.
Yeah, and they play with a different confidence in front of both goalies. So
Yeah.
it's not like we have. I mean, you could make the argument between the two Jacobs that Montreal as a team plays the same in front of both of them. We don't play that way in front of Sammy, not this year. Maybe last year, but not this year.
Mhm.
So when your team has got that mindset, it's not announced in their dressing room. Holy crap, this guy's in net.
Mhm.
They all grip the stick tighter. They all tie their skates a different way, and it just throws up the whole game day mojo.
Mhm.
And we can't afford to start negatively in the hole, even if it's in emotion.
Yeah.
So I'd like to think that Dobish played some solid games, and Monty got a win against Winnipeg. So let's hope that he now gets that 2 weeks off. There was some talk of what he went through. We know that the Habs fired the goalie coach, which was hard on him, because he was never a regular player until he came to Montreal, and then his goalie coach was let go. And in fairness to Sammy, in and around that time he lost his grandmother, which would take effect on anybody. So he had a couple of things going through his head, but let's hope that this extra break is extra good for him, because as a backup goalie, I think he could be fantastic
Mhm.
with the pressure off.
Yeah. Okay. I'm not sure. I mean, I have an idea of how I want to tackle this. I made a list of who I think are expendable assets for Montreal right now. I have, as far as roster players go, I think Laine, Doc, Struble, Anderson, and I hate to say it, but Galley. I think that's expendable um, roster players that we have. As far as prospects go, I really only see three prospects that come hell or high water, I would never trade, and that would be Fowler, Zorofsky, and Hage. I think everybody else is open for fair business. Reinbacher, and his name just the young fella in Medicine Hat we just talked about the other night, the defenseman.
Bryce Pickford.
Pickford, all these guys. I think the rest are all up for grabs. Um, as from previous episodes we discussed, Montreal has all their draft picks for the next
four
20
years.
for 4 or 5 years, whatever. So, and this year coming, I think we have an extra second and an extra third as well. Um, I think that's all up for grabs as well. So I think we have a lot of bartering, a lot of chips at the table we could shove in if the right player comes along, which leads us to today's topic. Who's that player? What's the move? Where do you see the best fit for us?
Right. And I've kind of got, as tradables, I've got, the ones I'd like to see move out. I've got Line in that group. I think it's a foregone conclusion. I don't think it's a secret. If he
Mhm.
got traded, I don't think anybody's jaw would hit the floor. Because he wants to play, he gets paid a lot of money.
Yeah.
Believe it or not, there's other teams that would be interested, and for obvious reasons. A Galley for the same reason. He had two good games before the break, but two games don't make a season. Yes, he had a 3-point game, against Winnipeg, and great. He had a wonderful goal, fantastic goal. But again, too little, too late. He still paid a lot of money to do not enough, in my opinion. Um,
Now,
I've got
can I ask you a question and throw a little, and only because I heard Marco D'Amico, I think it was, talking about it today about uh, Galley's age factor, and this Olympic break could be good for him. This 2 weeks off could get him some rest, get him geared up again. Was he tired at the break? Was he draining the battery the longer he went, and now he gets a rest, and he can give a good push up to the playoffs.
and that's a fair assessment, because the season is long. It's already an 82 game season, and
Mhm.
when you factor in that the other pro sports, yes, baseball is 162 games, but not everybody plays every game, so you could rotate guys in and off, and a guy could have a full day off.
Mhm.
We carry two extra or three extra players, so if you send one guy to the press box, everybody has to play. Whereas, for example, the hometown Toronto Blue Jays could put five new guys in the lineup and give five guys a break,
Mhm.
right? And you might not use the same three guys out of your bullpen. Your starter pitcher only plays once every 5 games. So
Right.
that's set up different. Yes, they play a lot more games,
Mhm.
but it's not a physical, it's a grueling sport, but it's not a physically beat you up sport like hockey because the body contact issue. Football plays one game a week, so you go there. Basketball plays an 82 game season as well. Yes, they get fouled, and yes, these guys jump in the air and get slammed to the ground. Not everybody cries like LeBron.
Mhm.
So there are aspects of that as well. So the NHL season is probably the most grueling of the bunch.
Mhm.
Could we have jumped all these extra back-to-back home and home games, and that's why a guy like Galley aging is a little bit weary and
Mhm.
more worse for wear than normal? Possibly. He had a couple of good games. I would love nothing more than to see a rejuvenated Gallagher with one more playoff run in him,
Mhm.
because I think that's the guy we're trying to acquire.
Yeah,
We might
he's
already
he's
have
a
him.
playoff guy. I'm telling you, he is a playoff guy. But like I say, does he have the gas in the tank for another run? Listen, I hope he does.
Yeah, and I've got a couple others on my list, and one should be no surprise, Joe Valeno. I
Mhm.
don't know that he'll still be around.
Mm,
Yes, he's on a $925,000 contract, but when we get Newhook back and when we get Texier back because he's been out day to day,
mm,
Valeno's already been in the press box.
yeah.
So could he be of use to another team? Possibly. I'm not saying he nets you a Stanley Cup goal scoring player, but I think it's a body that could be moved out. And the last one may be the surprises because depending on what we could acquire, you got to give to get, and that could be Jake Evans going out the other way.
Mhm,
Just because right now we've got him pegged in as a 4C, he's not terribly expensive. He can give you quality minutes. And to another team, if we're trying to acquire and this is what we're going to talk about, what do we need? I think if we acquire anything up front, it's not a second line center. We got Kapanen. It's not a
mhm,
third line center. We got Deneau.
mhm,
We can put Bolduc or Texier in as a fourth line center if we really need to drop
mhm.
that far down. But I think we go after a scoring winger.
Yeah.
And, I will preface it now, a guy like Robert Thomas, who can play all three forward positions. So if you bring him in to be a number 2C, then Deneau goes down to, Kapanen goes down to 3, Deneau goes down to 4. So I don't know that we need a centerman,
Mhm,
but if we got a winger, Evans could be the guy that goes out because, again, he could serve a purpose to somewhere else.
mhm,
Um, Struble would be the last guy. Although recently, management has said they like Struble and Jack so they don't envision them going anywhere.
mhm,
Now, prospects, I'm 100% in agreeing with you. Hage isn't going anywhere. There's too much of a story written to that guy's name. He was
mhm.
great in the World Juniors. I would say probably our overall best forward. Zarovsky, I'm not too sure that one wouldn't be in play. I don't want to give him up, but under the right deal, everybody is tradable.
Uh-huh.
Wayne Gretzky was traded, so when that guy can be traded, I could say anybody could be traded.
Yeah.
He's 2 years away from joining us, so a lot could happen in 2 years. And if we hold on to him, is he going to shit the bed and forget how to play hockey? Not likely.
Mhm,
But he could be an asset that won't come back to hurt us, and we could use the help in the next 2 years. So if
mhm.
it took that guy to go, I could see that being traded. I don't see Pickford being traded. So I'm thinking he's had such an offensive year in Medicine Hat. He's a guy who could go to the minors and benefit from 1 or 2 good years in the minors.
Mhm.
And again, if you're moving guys in and out, he becomes the next guy up. I agree. Reinbacher could be on his way out, and some of these draft picks
Mhm.
because we can't keep them all,
Yeah.
right? Having 10 to 14 draft picks every year, you end up drafting guys. Yeah, Wonderbar.
Mhm.
Training camp is like 100 lost dogs running around a small backyard,
Yeah.
and at some point that's way too many.
Yeah. And
You've
they're
got to
just going to
use
be wasted because you're not going to have the
yeah,
spots for them all.
you can't offer them contracts, and then they're free to go and you get nothing for them. So
Mhm.
if that means you package up the occasional second and third and that becomes part of a package
Mhm.
over the next 3 drafts, it's going to happen because that's how we acquired the extra second and the extra third, is because we moved things along. We moved
Mhm.
other assets along to make that work. So we're in a good position because we have assets. We're in a good position because we have friendly cap or friendly contracts that are already under the cap. So, we just got to do it for the right piece.
Yeah. So I think we're pretty much fairly close in agreement on the moving parts. Um, let's discuss a little bit on, who we're going to move them out for. We've talked all year about, like you mentioned earlier, Robert Thomas, Tage Thompson, Alex Tuck. I know you've been a big Tuck fan. Yeah, I know you'd love to see him. Mason McTavish. I think that's the type of player we're looking for in that 24 plus or minus age range, in that 7-8 million salary for 5 or 6 years. I think those just happen to be ones that jump out of my head that are four players I think would fit that, that top six forward that we're actually looking for would fit that role perfectly.
Yeah, and I agree. Now there's the wish list and the reality list. And unfortunately, we might have to settle for reality list. We might not get the wish list.
Gosh.
Buffalo, yeah. Buffalo has had a resurgence.
Yeah.
They've been playing exceptionally well down the stretch and
Mhm.
has put them back in a playoff spot
Yeah.
and look good doing it. So that tells me Tage Thompson's off the market. I don't see any colossal boat anchor pulling that ship down that says that he's going to be moved.
I have
Alex,
faith in the Tonawanda dumpster fire that it's going to light up again. I'm having
Yeah,
faith
well,
that they're going to
it
crash.
it will, but that'll just make them fizzle out of the playoffs at this point
Mhm.
because they're playing well. Alex Tuck has already said he does not want to return to Buffalo. He has zero intention on signing a contract. Does that mean Buffalo holds on to him and runs a gamut on a playoff run and gets nothing for him? Or do they trade him? My guess is in order to move forward as an organization, you keep the guys that want to be there. So
Mhm.
I think he gets moved out. I would love to have
Yeah.
him. Ryan O'Reilly would be another guy, again, 34. But what window do you want? Do you want him for 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years? We're not going to get a guy that's coming in on year one of a 7 year deal that fits the 22 to 26 age group, is
Yeah.
signed up for 7 years on a $7 million or less contract and plays the damn position that we need him to play.
Well, has he
So
not got like 3 or 4 years left on his deal?
Ryan O'Reilly,
Yeah.
I
What's
think
his?
2 more years after this year.
Oh,
So I
this year and next year. Sorry. So
Yeah,
next
this
year
year.
he's
Okay,
a
this year.
UFA at 4.5 million right now. Sorry.
But if we're keeping Zarovsky and we have Hage, he bridges a gap. So he's still worth it
Mhm.
in the end. It's just what do you give up for him?
Mhm.
Right. So, those are guys up front that fit a bill. And would be a dynamic. Robert Thomas is out of all those guys, the young guys that can play multiple position. He's the guy that I would target because he hits the style we want, the cap and the term. So he fits all those things.
Mhm.
Nazem Kadri, again, still linked to us in talks. I'm interested if something of value goes the other way in salary and or some retention, and we don't give up a ton.
Yeah, I'm
If
not
I'm
really
looking,
interested in Kadri. I think I just I don't know. I'm not.
he's a stopgap player to
Mhm.
allow other players to get here. But why should we settle for a stopgap player? Why are we not trying to hit a home run?
Yeah.
If there's a team that's struggling and we have a ton of assets, why shouldn't we hit the home run so we can run it back again next year if it doesn't work out this year and have
Mhm.
that continuity, the camaraderie, and a gamesmanship of a
Mhm.
similar roster for another 80 games?
Yeah. I mean, I'm not saying no to Kadri again. As much as like you were saying, any player is tradable. Like you said, they traded Wayne, so I'm willing to move on any trade, but the price has to be right. I would give up more for Robert Thomas than I would for Kadri, I guess is the best way to
I give up twice
explain.
as much for Thomas for that
Yeah.
exact same reason.
Yeah. So,
And you and I were talking prior to going live for this. I would take Sidney Crosby at the drop of a hat, but
mm,
at what cost?
yeah.
I'm not giving up. I'm not giving up Slavkovsky. I'm not giving up Zarovsky.
Mm,
Plus 2 draft picks, plus Owen Beck, plus Reinbacher, and the frozen
yeah.
head of Jean Beliveau.
Yeah.
Not giving all that up. Because that's an overpay for a guy that'll give you one good year, possibly another full season next year, and
Yeah.
then it's a crapshoot if he's healthy. He's playing lights out, point per game still year 22. But again, we got to transition this from 1 year to the next. If you want to think long term wise, we don't want to become the Toronto Maple Leafs.
Yeah.
They have done this year after year after year. They've held on to 4 players. They've got a bunch of farm team guys like Max Domi who don't have any business owning bob skates, let alone hockey skates. And then you're overpaying these guys because, oh, I'm from Toronto, whoop de doo da day. Go buy a street vendor hot dog cart and stand outside and sell to the fans. You don't need to rip them off for their money to see you play.
Mm,
Right. So we can't keep throwing more shit at the wall to see what sticks and run out of draft picks and assets and then be in the rut that the Leafs are in. We're
mm,
trying to build a transitionary
mm.
powerhouse. I know that term sounds very generous, powerhouse, but you want a team like the old Red Wings of the 90s that were in the playoffs with a chance to win every year. Just get us in the dance. We'll show you how far we can go.
And what they did to make that happen is, like you said, they weren't afraid to trade away that player that may not be like, they weren't trading away their core player. They weren't trading Iserman and that kind of thing, but they were trading players that were maybe up and coming or, a top six player, but they weren't afraid to trade that guy away to get an asset back that was going to keep them younger, I guess. I don't know if you know what I mean by that. That
Yeah,
was going to
yeah,
extend their window basically. And
right,
Montreal right now, I believe, is primed and set up for that perfectly with the players we have, the players that we can move, but also the players that are coming, i.e., Hage, Swarovski, Pickford,
Pickford, Fowler.
Reinbacher, Fowler, and then that doesn't even include the draft picks we're going to be getting in, after that. So there's
Right,
there's already that transitioning or lengthening of window, and a move hasn't even been made yet, right? So
right.
I see. I think if I'm half intelligent, I see the game plan, what Hugo's doing, and setting up for the long term because we know Fowler is going to be probably 2 years away. Zorowski's two for sure. Hage apparently is going to be at the end of his double NCAA season this year is going to get the
The,
Hudson treatment. He's coming up for the last few games. So there is a transition there. So like you say, is Crosby, is O'Reilly, is that type of player more important now to get us that 2 or 3 years to get to that?
I think one guy might be, but I'm not all in on three old guys for the sake of three old guys because
Mhm.
you're going to fall flat on your face.
Yeah,
I'm willing to take a flyer on one rental, being an
yeah.
old guy,
Mhm.
and I'll use an example like a Luke Shen.
Mhm.
Luke brings an element. He's a right shot D man. He's tough. He's played in a lot of playoff games. Who could help us? But if you're only giving up a draft pick and a prospect, and not Reinbacher in a first, but if you're giving up a third round pick and a minor league guy just to bring a guy in, I'm okay if that doesn't work out
Mhm.
because you're not giving up a ton of asset to get him. So the
Yeah.
risk reward is there. Does that mean am I all in on the Luke Shen bandwagon? I am. I think that would be a good rental player, but I'm not prepared to give up two first round picks, two top end prospects, and a roster player to get Sidney Crosby for what might be 2 years.
Mhm. Yeah.
So,
So
it's all perspective.
yeah. So if you're looking at I think would you agree our biggest assets that we have to move out right now would be our extra D men, like whether like Struble, I think Struble's expendable, Reinbacher, that type of thing. I think that's our biggest I think that's what will fetch us our biggest return, I basically is what I'm
Right.
thinking.
Yeah. And then, if you look, I mean, you've got Owen Beck, who was I think he was drafted 62nd overall. He was a second round pick. And has had a cup of coffee with us and looked pretty good. A lot of people would argue his size would come to a disadvantage. He's another guy that's on the smaller side. Not that I'm against the small guys, because Caulfield and Hudson aren't playing small and producing.
Mhm.
So, I'm not opposed to the Owen Beck in that theory. But, when you've got Slavkovsky, Caulfield, Suzuki, and you've got all these guys locked up for 7 and 8 years, somebody can't be locked up and somebody can't fit.
Mhm.
And when you got Hage and Swarovski coming, they will be 7 and 8 year guys after their entry level deals, and will bridge that gap for the next 5 to 10 years. So we have the right transition pieces in place. So with some young guys, with some other guys in the minors, we still have Engstrom, who's a young D man that could be moved. Reinbacher, you I don't want to move on from Florian Jacki, but at this point, he may be the odd duck out because he's only brings one dynamic.
Mhm.
So and plus the draft picks, I think we have enough to move that we don't have to mortgage the current and the future to get the accomplished needs done. But again, what is our greatest need? Another goal scorer? We're third in the league in goals.
Mhm.
You can never have too much of that though.
Mhm. Well,
But
I think
it's got to be the right guy though.
yeah, and I would say I think our need really I think we need that winger to play up on the top line with Suzuki and Caulfield. I think we need that winger. And the reason why I think that is obviously, I mean, Texier, Newhook's coming back. I mean, I don't think, as much as I think Texier has played great, Newhook I think is a good player. I think but I just don't see that fit there. They need that player that can go in there, and then that solidifies the top two lines. But then that also pushes the pressure off down on the lower lines. Do you know what I mean? Like
Right.
everything shifts
Well,
down. Because if you're taking, for instance, we don't need a 2C because we're already pretty solid up the middle, right? We've got
Cap
Suzuki.
Kapanen
Kapanen,
becomes your 2C.
we got
Dano's your
Dano, we got
3C, and then
Evans. You know what I
Evans.
mean? Like, so I don't even really see that. And you got New Hook that's also been playing center. So I mean, I don't see um, that being the problem. I see that top line guy where you can take, for instance, if Texier's up there playing now. Like, let's be honest, as great as I think he's playing, I'm glad we got him. He's really a third line guy, right?
Right.
So put him down where
Ultimately.
he is, let him play in his element, and let him shine down there, and it just spreads it further down the list.
Agreed, and that's ultimately what you want. You want guys playing in the element that's going to maximize the result.
Mhm.
So, could we go get a number one winger? Absolutely.
Mhm.
If that's Robert Thomas, give him to me.
Mhm.
You know, um, if it's not that, I think we need some. I think we need some size and some toughness. So who comes to mind? A Blake Coleman comes to mind. He's a
Yeah.
guy who's won a Stanley Cup, who can score on a third, fourth line. That could be an asset.
Yeah. I've heard that name bandied around, and it seems to be the closer we get to the trade deadline, the more his name comes up.
Yeah, and again, as long as we don't overpay, right? But do we need to overhaul? No. But when guys come in, guys go out because you
Mhm.
can't keep them all. You can't say, well, we'll trade you two minor leaguers and a draft pick, and then we'll make a second deal, two minor leaguers and two draft picks.
Mhm.
Then where we put all these guys? We are in a position where I believe Line A will be gone. LA's talked about him to play with Panarin. That's a new one.
Mhm.
Carolina said that they need another scoring forward to
Yeah.
help out with a power play. So he could be moved there. Sayonara. But what are you taking back? Right.
Well, that
So,
that Carolina one, that's the one that I've been hearing the most. Uh, excuse me, more recently has been coming up because uh, uh, Sebastian Aho, Nikolai Ehlers, and Patrick Laine are the three of them are best friends. I mean, they all play
yeah.
together on their national team. They're all fellow country mates or whatever. Um, I think they'd love to have them. I mean,
Yeah.
like you say,
It's a modified homecoming and it puts a guy comfortable as an environment, right?
yeah,
So coming into a new place, you fit in right away.
yeah. But then,
Uh,
what do you get back? Are we taking back Kakademi or?
no, yeah, that's it. That's not going to happen. Yeah.
So bargaining from a position of strength on defense, if you look at who's out around the league as far as whether it be a bubble team right now, like you've got, Utah out west, Anaheim, Los Angeles, uh, I mean, to a certain extent, Nashville too, because they're not really out of it yet. But then you've got, Columbus, Washington, Buffalo, and Boston. I don't see Montreal making a deal with those two, but, Columbus, Washington, that kind of a thing, that kind of lets you lead who the teams are. But if you're looking at defense, those are also the teams that need help on defense as well, right? So
right.
is there anybody from either of those teams I mentioned, or maybe somebody else that you might think of that could be a possible fit?
Well, I mean, I'm gonna go for the home run here because I think we have the assets to pull it off. But if you're going to go to a team that's struggling and a team that's looking to make a change and rebuild, why not go to Nashville and say, what's it going to take to get Roman Yossi here?
Whew.
Right? I mean, it's a big ask. I
Yeah.
mean, the other guy that I would be really intrigued to get because St. Louis is struggling is Colton Parayko. But again, what do you want to give up?
Yeah.
Parayko's not a Yossi. Yossi is an offensive guy, wears a letter. Parayko's a big guy, block shot, right-handed guy. Those are all going to come with subsequent, you're going to have to pay.
Mm.
Could we give a Kirby Doc and a Jaden Struble and a Ryan Bacher to get, and maybe a second round pick to get Parayko? I'm in.
Mm.
It seems like an overpay, but I'm in. But,
Yeah.
again, there's not many of those deals out there.
So then, that would really, like, our top four would be, realistically, our top six would be
Yeah,
unmatchable. Like that's just crazy. And I don't mean crazy in the sense of your idea. I just think it's crazy that you could put that defensive core together, right? And because
right,
you say you're shooting for the stars, anything's possible, right? And we do have the
right.
assets to make it happen.
And as much as I don't want to trade them, if you're trying to trade within the Western Conference, it might take a Josh Anderson going to St. Louis to be part of that
Mhm.
deal. But we have the assets because you're bringing Hage in. right? I just like Anderson's size, and when he plays within his element, he plays physical. He can score
Mhm.
and skate. I don't really want to give him up, but that they're gonna say give me Demidov, and you're gonna say Jam Salt will give you Gallagher, and they're gonna say no, how about Anderson? It's
Mhm.
gonna go back and forth, and you're gonna end up settling on something that wasn't part of the original trade package,
Yeah, it'll just get out of hand. Um,
right?
so let me ask you this now, and again, we've discussed this many times on many episodes about, 50 contracts, only so many roster spots. I know after the trade deadline, the roster opens right up, and as long as you're under the cap, you can have
Whatever.
30 players
Yeah.
on your roster. It don't matter as long as you're cap compliant. Um, there's been a lot of talk about, and several times we've talked about the enigma that is Arbor Jacki. Some people say, you know, he's hurting the team. We need to trade him, which I think is absolutely asinine. Um, we both agree he brings something like no other player can bring, but he's getting 10 minutes a game as a defenseman. So let's just play sort of devil's
Devil's
advocate.
advocate.
Let's say Arbor Jacki is not your guy on defense. I have an idea. I've said it earlier, and I've talked on other, Facebook groups and podcasts and things about it. Why not move Arbor Jacki up to a fourth line wing spot and let him hammer out there? Because wherever you put him, if you're not happy with him on defense, he has to stay in the lineup. To me, that is a non-negotiable. He's not
And I
fighting like he
said that
used to because I don't think he needs to. I think people around the league have got the message, but I think he needs to stay in the lineup. But if you put him up on a wing and give it a try, well, now that makes room for Roman Yossi, makes room for another defenseman coming in, or Jacob Struble, or whoever, right? Like,
right. And I said this, way back talking to somebody else long before the season started. I don't know why teams don't go after and create the hybrid player.
mhm,
Wendell Clark was drafted as a defenseman to the Toronto Maple Leafs. They made him a forward.
yeah,
Um, why can we not take an Arbor Jack guy and say, look, you go stand in front of that in the second power play unit, be
yeah,
the first guy in on the puck or the second guy in,
yeah,
throw a big hit. He's got a bit of a howitzer.
yeah,
Could he be any worse? And I hate to say it, but could he be any worse than Gallagher or Texier or
yeah,
Deneau up front?
yeah,
I mean, he's going to bring an element. I
yeah,
don't know why they haven't floated this idea.
yeah. Now, and
Because you keep him in the lineup, and
yeah,
again, if you're only going to give him 10 minutes, make it a productive 10 minutes,
mhm, a painful 10 minutes for the other team.
right? And
Yeah,
and that would translate into 10 more minutes, maybe 20 minutes. I mean, there's guys that are playing 17,
yeah,
18 minutes.
yeah,
If you're effective, it gives them a chance. And by creating that hybrid unicorn type of player, if you get a couple of defensemen that get into penalty trouble, you've got a guy that drops back and fits
shift
back
him
in.
back, shift him back, and let him eat up some minutes. Yeah, he's always there.
So you don't have to carry as many
Mhm,
black aces on a road trip. You can carry Jack guy and a defenseman, or Jack guy and a forward, another forward, and you just say, okay, Arbor, you're going to play as a forward tonight. Oh,
mhm,
sorry, Matheson took a puck to the groin, and he's in getting a rub down. Play a couple of shifts in the back end.
mhm,
He's just going to toe the line. He wants to be here.
yeah.
So
I think
I'm all
I
for
think
it.
he would love the idea. I just think he wants to play and he wants to get
Yeah,
minutes no matter where it is. I think he'll,
absolutely.
he would go out and, like you say, stand in front of the net, take shots off the head to score, whatever. I just think he wants to be there and he wants to play.
Yeah, yeah. And I will say this in another part of the devil's advocate. If we were to land a big guy like a Colton Parayko, it may come on the back of Jack going the other way,
Mhm. Yeah, see, I
right?
don't I don't like that idea. I mean,
I don't like it either, but
yeah,
we talk about this. In order to give, you got to get. And in order to
yeah,
get, you got to give. What are you willing to sacrifice? And again, going back to a statistic you just mentioned, he's playing 10 minutes a game.
mhm,
So if you could move a guy playing 10 minutes that has the same kind of value and style of game and anticipation for a
mhm.
guy that can play 25 minutes, I'm taking the 25-minute guy all day long.
Oh,
It
you're
just
killing me,
comes with
Steve. You're killing me.
I know it just comes with the territory,
Yeah,
but that could be what pushes the deal
yeah,
across the finish line. I don't want to, but there's every once in a while you get kicked in the Saving Private Ryan's, and you
yeah,
got to get rid of a guy.
yeah. So let me fast forward the clock here real quick and throw another hypothetical at you. Like I said, I've been thinking about this Jack Eye playing forward thing for a while. Once the trade deadline's done and all the moves are made, whatever, let's just say for argument's sake, we still have Josh Anderson, right? So
Yep.
imagine our fourth line next year, Josh Anderson and Arbor Jack Eye on the wings and Florian Jack Eye playing center. Would that not
Like
be a painful line? Like, I mean, just it would be scary. They'd just be running north and south and just crushing people.
it would be put on the foil and let's get her
Yeah,
done because
yeah,
it would be, it would be the Don Cherry Rock'em Sock'em hockey line,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
Because that would be the energy. Could you imagine the Bell Center every time there's a hit, a fight, like
yeah,
something bone crunching, someone's bones crunching, and that's the energy that they would have the ability to bring.
yeah. And then that would just roll up through the rest of the team, and that's just like that's like six Red Bulls before a game for them guys. That just ramps up the energy and gets the adrenaline going.
Yeah, I mean, at that point, Demidov could skate up behind anybody and two-hand him across the back and just point to the bench because
Yeah,
you've got
yeah.
the
Deal
three
with it.
Jims from
Yeah,
Shorzy out there. You've
yeah,
got stuff to boot.
yeah,
But you know that's an EA sports trade, right? Like
yeah,
we could have some fun with that.
yeah.
But we even if we stood pat this year, I
Mhm,
would be slightly disappointed
mhm,
because I like to add. I don't want to be known as the Toronto Maple Leafs. There's always next year. At some point, you got to decide now's the time. We
mhm.
talked about this at the beginning of the year about where teams were when we did our projections. We projected ourselves to be in the top. Right now, I said Tampa was going to win the division. Right now, they're leading the division. I said Montreal and Toronto are going to be right there. Montreal's right there. At some point you got to itch closer. And if these other teams are faltering, now's the time to itch in.
Yeah.
That's
I
just
think
my opinion.
you got to strike while the iron's hot. Um, so on that, I think that's going to take us right into our final thoughts. Um, my final thought basically, like our defense needs a little bit of a pick me up. I'm not sure if it's the matter of, trading for a player. Maybe it's an adjustment on a system or something. I don't know. I just would like to see our goals against go down. Then again, like you say, you take away those 4 or 5 games where they really shit the bed in the goal department. We're probably top 10, maybe top 15 in goals against, and that makes a huge difference. I don't know. I think our glaring thing is we need that. I think we need that winger for the top line, which again pushes everything down, settles the
And
waves
balance
through
and balances out.
and balances everything in the long run. So again, I would like to see a move for that top six player, the winger. Um, and depending on control, age, years of service, that type of thing, I'd be almost willing to give up just about anything to make it happen. If it's a rental guy, I wouldn't want to give away too much for, it's got to be a hockey deal and it's got to make sense for the team and not push a panic trade.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think if we systematically uh, approach whether it's a coaching thing or a preparation thing, maybe it's an injury thing and we just couldn't play the style because in the beginning of the year we were on fire. I'm hoping that that's an off-season move with coaches because I think systems are lacking somewhere. I'd like to see a little bit of security coming out of this trade deadline so that we are playing better.
Mhm.
I'd like again. I agree. We need a top winger because Slav has settled in on the second line and he's become a man child there. So let's not take him out of that because I think if the top line is even better, he gets even more of a break, and that's what that kid needs.
Mhm.
And I think we just need some size. Whether that's a Jake DeBrusk out of Vancouver who could be on the move, who plays a little bit of a grindy game, who could be an asset. Let's throw another one. Let's see if Matthew Olivier in Columbus would be available. A little bit of a
I
rock'em
would love
sock'em
to have
kind of
him.
guy. There's guys out there. It's just what is it going to cost? So
Yeah.
I'd like to get. I'd prefer DeBrusk over Olivier to be honest, because I think DeBrusk helps you in the playoffs playing
Mhm.
regular shifts. I don't know that Olivier defensively does, but I mean, there's players out there. It's just we got to make a move.
Mhm. Yeah. Okay. Real quick before we get on to the trivia question, I need to give a shout out to I got a longtime friend of mine, Jeff, who I've known him through hockey for years. One time he was my boss. I just want to give out to a shout out to his son Jake, who's a Habs fan. Today's his 18th birthday, so happy birthday, Jake. Let's go Habs go, and I hope we'll get you a Stanley Cup for your birthday this year. And
Absolutely, amen.
on to your trivia questions. On to the answer, I guess, Steve.
So the answer. So the 1980-81 season saw us make two moves. One was Ken Berry was traded to Colorado, but the prominent name that we traded in our first, I guess if you want to call it prominent trade deadline deal was,
Mm-hmm.
I said it, this answer had a bit of hop to it. Bunny Larocque was
Mm-hmm.
traded from Montreal to Toronto for Robert Picard. So
Mm-hmm.
there is your first trade deadline day blockbuster that the
Mm-hmm.
Habs were involved in.
All solid hockey Hall of Fame players there that I'm surprised nobody remembered. Anyways, excellent question as always, Steve. Again, I had no clue on this one either. I usually get about one out of four of your questions, one out of five. So I'm gonna have to pick up my research a little more.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to buy you a book for Christmas next year, all things Habs, with all the dumb trivia questions that nobody
Yeah,
will ever get, but they're
yeah,
prominent things. And at the end of the day, folks, what we try to do with these trivia is enlighten you a little bit. I mean, we're a storied franchise, and we have lots of names that have played for us, and some of them you could go back and say, oh shoot, I forgot that 20 years ago that guy actually played for us.
yeah.
I mean, we've talked about goalies and how many we used one year. And, Andrew Hammond, who was primarily known as the Hamburger in Ottawa, played for Montreal. Alex Auld, another goalie, played Montreal. You forget, and you're like, really, they played here? But yeah, that's having a long history. So it's a little bit of fun. Some of these are hard. We'll come up with a couple easy ones, and see if we can keep the trainer rolling.
Okay. On that note, that's going to conclude today's episode of Behind Enemy Lines Hockey Podcast. Thanks for watching. Remember, help us out by hitting the like, share, subscribe button. Hit that subscribe button. We're climbing. We're over 40 subscribers now. We're running up there to the
We're on the
55.
we're on the cusp. We're on
We're
the
on the
cusp.
cusp of the half century mark. So again, remember, thanks for watching. Show us your input. Let us know what you think. And like Steve always says,
As always, happy birthday to one. Keep your stick on the ice.